Hello and happy Monday. Welcome to Charting with Dan.
Oh,
You're Dan Murrell.
so many charts. This is a frenetic day here at the Screen Junkies newsroom.
Busy day.
Busy day.
Already.
Not a busy weekend at the box office.
No, August is done. The finals are in. And how bad is it?
The news is not good. I have the summer numbers, I have the August numbers, I have the Labor Day numbers. Spoiler alert, they're all terrible.
Yeah.
So let's start with the Labor Day. This Labor Day weekend, now, this has always been kind of a dead zone. People say some movies have opened there, but there's not been a huge hit that's been born out of Labor Day weekend. However, having said that, Hollywood steered completely clear, and the box office results showed it. Let's look at the top five. The Hitman's Bodyguard, silver lining, the only movie released this summer to be number one for 3 consecutive weeks. So good for Hitman's Bodyguard.
That is fascinating to me. That's a whole video I want to do.
Yeah. It's been number one for 3 consecutive weeks. That movie, Fate of the Furious, and Split, all the only movies of 2017 to be number one for 3 weeks at the box office.
The Fate of the Furious and Split I'm not trying to take a jab here at the Hitman's Bodyguard. It's a serviceable action movie. We talked about that.
Right.
You know, it was certainly reviled by many critics. But
it's fine.
It's fine.
But it's also coming in number one with like $10 million, $12, $13 million. So it's not like it's not going to be a $100 million hit because it's very low competition. So, but good for Hitman's Bodyguard. I mean, it's something to put in their cap. Wind River was also had a big week. It jumped about 70%. It's actually the number 3 movie. Animal Creation hanging in there. That is going to be a huge money maker. Yeah. Leap sticking in there, and actually Dunkirk, which when the actuals came in, which is why I like to use the actuals. Logan Lucky actually was reported as the number 5 movie. When the actuals came in, it flip-flopped. So Dunkirk returns to the top 5. We'll have a little bit more to say about Dunkirk, but let's talk about the box office weekend as a whole. This was the worst Labor Day of the century.
Yeah.
Literally. You have to go back to 1998, almost 20 years, to find, as far as total gross, a Labor Day weekend that was worse than this one. So not good news for the box office in general.
What movies were we looking at then? What were the offerings?
1998? Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. Okay. I did not. Of everything that I researched, I did not actually research.
There's a ton of research here, so we'll get into that.
True.
We were talking about this with it's funny because Wind River, I think, is like this little engine that is just growing and growing and keep on chugging along. It's already getting pre-Oscar buzz. That one's, I think, one to definitely look out for, especially because the truth is, when it comes to the Academy Awards, word of mouth is so important.
And word of mouth is really strong on this movie. I mean, they took a much more traditional approach. I mean, this is how every movie used to open. They used to open small theaters, and then they go a little wider and a little wider. And if word of mouth was good, then they would open wider. And that's what Wind River's doing. It's now been open for over a month, and it continues to increase theater count and business week over week over week. So this has been a real slow grower, and a sign that this could be like Hell or High Water, which Taylor Sheridan wrote last summer. Yeah. This could be a movie that really succeeds on word of mouth. It's made about $18 million. It's still growing. So, you know, Wind River, we keep talking about him. One of the smaller movies that has just kind of survived on word of mouth. It's going to turn over a nice profit.
Yeah, and which is one of the better stories of this summer. The question will be, which franchise film will he do next?
Yes.
How are we looking domestically?
Well, domestically, this was, if you want to put as far as new releases, I said that Hollywood kind of steer clear.
There were some expansions.
But the highest charting new movie that came out was the reissue of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, in 14th place with like $1.4 million. However, per screen on 4Screen, Viceroy's House stars Gillian Anderson and Hugh Bonneville. It's about the last viceroy in India. It's directed by Gurinder Chadha, who did Bend It Like Beckham, playing on 4Screen. $15,794 per screen. So always nice to see the little movies having a good weekend.
Yeah.
Even on Labor Day, the smaller movies still opening well.
And I think that's also been one of the nice things. There's more space because there haven't been a lot of huge hits, mega hits taking all of the box office. There actually has been a little more room for smaller movies to have a little bit of playing time.
Sure.
I love Bend It Like Beckham, and you should not judge me.
Viceroy's House, check it out. It's a very limited release, but it could be rolling out. If, like Wind River, it's getting great word of mouth. Could be coming to a theater near you. So I mentioned the summer numbers. The numbers are in. Let's just rip this Band-Aid off because we talked about how bad August was. This was an historically bad August. Percentage-wise, it was down 57.6% from last year. So over a 50% drop from last year's August, which is not good. It was the lowest grossing August by total numbers since 1987.
And I'm sad
this is a
because
total
I
disaster.
love movies.
Yeah.
I'm sad. This isn't good, you guys.
3 Men and a Baby was out in theaters the last time there was an August this bad at the box office. So
does that tell the whole story?
It doesn't tell the whole story. We'll talk a little bit about the whole story, but just looking at August, complete disaster box office wise. Yes, there were some movies that are yielding some returns, but an overall number, not good. Looking at the total summer box office, down 18% from last year. A huge drop, not what you want to see. Usually if there's a drop, it's, a few percentage points. You obviously want to see growth from the year before. It's down 18% by total gross. Again, the worst summer since 2005. So it's been over 10 years since we had a lower grossing summer at the box office. However, that does not tell the whole story because, we talk numbers, and part of the reason that if you look at the top 10 moneymakers of all time, they all seem to have been released in the last 7 to 8 years is inflation.
Yes.
As time goes on, the dollar is worth less, and you have to adjust for the economy, for growth. And so when you adjust for inflation, the top grossing movie of all time is like Gone with the Wind. It made over $1 billion domestically. So
still to this day, Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. So I wanted to look at this summer's gross and put it kind of in a more historical perspective if you adjust the numbers for inflation.
Yeah.
So basically, if a dollar was worth the same today as it was worth 20 years ago, 30 years ago, where would this summer rank? 2017 had a gross of $3.65 billion. If you adjust all the totals from the summers going back as far as I could go back, this was the worst summer since 1992. As far as box office gross. 1992, the summer box office was $2.87 billion. So we're looking at, if you adjust for inflation, the worst summer in 25 years, essentially, which is very bad news. I tried to go back and find the August number. We talked about how low that was. I adjusted that for inflation and tried to find one that was lower, and I ran out of years that they kept this kind of red stops.
It's historically low.
It's historically low.
Yeah.
So it's definitely as far back as the early 80s. You may have to go back to Jaws to the 70s to find an August that was as bad as the one that we just had. So the state of the movie-going business, particularly this summer, is not good. AMC's stock price is literally been cut in half since summer movie season started on May 1st. I think that these numbers are terrible for Hollywood. I mentioned that Hollywood had a good spring, it had a good winter. It's not good enough to justify these numbers, and with MoviePass, with all the talk about 4K and streaming, and I think when you look back, there have been some canaries in the coal mine. The Lone Ranger a few years ago. Some of these big movies that are, of course they're going to make money, that didn't succeed. And one by one, last summer there were so many flops. I think this will be the watershed year when you look back on it that changed the way that people saw movie distribution, because people, by and large, are not going to the movies.
Well, it is an interesting phenomenon, and I think that one of the things that we're going to want to do, we talk about this a lot around here in terms of the streaming wars. We've talked about MoviePass. We are going to be talking about Apple is offering 4K coming up here, and so there's a number of things that are changing the distribution model. I don't know if we know yet what it means for movies and what it means for Hollywood in total. I think we do know what it means for AMC and theater chains. AMC expanded very rapidly. We've talked about this before, it made massive upgrades in the theater, making premium theater experiences, hoping to draw in audiences. But the fact is they couldn't get the price point to a point that was competitive with what people can do at home for far less money and far less hassle. And that's one of the big tricks. But at the end of the year, I think what we should look at a lot is not just the total box office, but the return on investment and the year as a whole, because one of the things that's changed is that seasons for movies do not behave the same way.
Which is why I think that you can't write the book on the year right now, because I think we've had more out-of-season hits this year. Beauty and the Beast and Logan, Fate of the Furious, obviously, and Get Out and Split. I think we've had more out-of-season hits than is normal. So I think what's really going to be the test of time is let's look at January, when the Last Jedi grosses are into February, when you can look at 2017 in total and say, okay, did this close the lid on the summer movie season being the definitive season for blockbusters, or did this open the door on a genuine crisis point where Hollywood is saying people aren't going to the theater and we have to fundamentally change how we do things.
And that's where I think we're going to land at the end of this year, because the studios are more and more open now than they have been previously to moving films into the home on VOD far quicker. The only one that's really resistant is Disney at this point, because they don't need it. And the big question at the end of the year is also going to be, where are the studios' financials at the end of the year?
Are they
making money? Are they not making money? A couple of years ago, it was Disney was making the lion's share of everything of all the studios.
Sure. And I mean, look at how much money they're making, and maybe they're not making as much money, but if they're getting a better return on their investment by investing less in movies, well, maybe that's the new path going forward. So a lot of questions. However, it's hard to characterize this summer as anything but a massive disappointment for Hollywood in general, because grosses are way down, and it has opened the door now, I think, finally, where theater owners and studios had that stranglehold on everyone saying, we want to look at different distribution venues and different ways to do it, and they always said, like, no, because people love going to the movies. At the minimum, this summer has kind of caused them to have to release that stranglehold and listen to ideas, because they're now definitive proof, historic proof, that people are not going at the numbers that they used to go.
And the good thing about that, I think that we will find out, and I want to get to the domestic box office, but my hope is that when things sort of collapse, of course it's hard, it also means that there's all kinds of room for creativity, innovation, new ideas, interesting films, all kinds of things to break out of the mold of some of what feels a little formulaic sometimes.
The Netflix model didn't exist until Netflix invented it. And you can either be Netflix or you can be Blockbuster, who fought against it, and look where that got them. So it's going to be very intriguing to see where it goes from here. But let's look at the top 10, the U.S. domestic yearly top 10 list, because for the first time in a while, since the middle of the summer, there's actually some movement. We talked about this last week. Dunkirk actually jumps onto the top 10 list. It is now number 8. Lego Batman movie Get Out dropped down. The Boss Baby drops out of the 2017 U.S. domestic list. So Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk, now a top 10 2017 overall movie. So great for that movie.
It's still such an interesting mix to see Dunkirk in there. Wonder Woman, like we were talking about last week, did expand again this weekend.
And Wonder Woman actually crossed a threshold this weekend. It became one of the 5 highest grossing comic book movies in the United States of all time. It jumped over Iron Man 3 and Captain America Civil War. Its gross now stands at over $409 million, and it is now, if we can throw that up there, it is now the 2 Dark Knight movies, Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises, and Avengers and Avengers Age of Ultron, and Wonder Woman. So congratulations
amazing.
to Wonder Woman. It had the staying power. It's over $400 million, now one of the top 5 highest grossing domestic comic book movies here in the U.S. And if we want to look at the worldwide box office, I want to look at this chart because
now is the time that we check in on Wolf Warrior 2.
Yes, now's the time we check in on Wolf Warrior 2. It's where it was last week. It's at number 5. However, it might not be there for long, because if you look down at number 8, Spider-Man Homecoming, a lot of people might say, like, oh, well, $747 million. It's wrapped up its run, so that's pretty respectable. It has not, because one of the reasons Wolf Warrior 2 did so well is because China cleared out theaters basically for a month to give it free reign, which is why one of the reasons it racked up such an amazing gross. Spider-Man Homecoming opens in China this weekend, and most analysts, most people are expecting to gross at least $100 million in China. Not this weekend, but total. So
in total, yeah.
Where Spider-Man is now, you could see it jump Wolf Warrior 2. If it excels projections, you could see it jumping Guardian of the Galaxy. So the box office, the worldwide box office of Spider-Man Homecoming has not been written because it opens in a major, major market this weekend.
It would be unbelievable if it made $100 million this weekend. It's not going to.
It's not going to make $100 million this weekend.
But it could over
time. They don't think anyway.
Certainly.
But over time, people are expecting it to make at least $100 million during its run in China. The last Spider-Man movie, Amazing Spider-Man 2, made that kind of money. So Spider-Man Homecoming could be a top 5 worldwide grosser by the time all's said and done in China. We'll see how it does there. But the big news here in the U.S. is, and Hollywood's big news is that that clown is rising from the sewer at just the right time.
Thank God.
Is opening. It is the biggest release since July, really, as far as just anticipation.
This is being projected to be one of the biggest horror movie openings of all time. We have a review that will be going up at 11 p.m. tonight that you can check out here on Screen Junkies News. And man, it could not have come at a better time. I will say, just really quickly, I think Wonder Woman did take advantage of not take advantage, but benefited from a slower summer. So that's awesome.
Oh, sure. It played out a lot. And yeah, you mentioned it. Basically, the hurdle it has to clear is $52.5 million. That's the horror movie weekend opening record. It's held by Paranormal Activity 3.
You can do it.
The tracking that it has is putting it in that range. So next Monday, I could be sitting here and we could have a new highest horror opening weekend of all time, depending on how it performs. We'll see. But Hollywood needs it regardless. Finally, a boost in the arm, and we'll see how it does.
This will be another one for Warner Brothers this weekend.
Yep.
It is coming out. You guys let us know if you're going to see it. Were there any movies that you wish you could have seen this summer? What do you think of the summer box office and the way things are going in terms of theatrical distribution? Is it just going to be high end and then home? Is that going to be it in the end? Let us know in the comments below, or you can talk to us on Twitter. I'm at Roth Cornet.
I am at Murrell Dan.
And we will see you next time, Charting with Dan.